I am getting ready to do something that I said I would never do. I made this one and it was a big boy, but I just wanted to show it to you. It turned out great, and I added a 1/3 cup of honey to this one, and I added a 1/2 teaspoon more of salt. Just wanted to mix it up a little bit, but for this recipe there will be no honey. I'm still going to use 2.5 teaspoons of salt though, because I like to have a little bit more flavor. So if you are here today and you only want the sourdough recipe and you don't want to hear my story, in the description below there are timestamps, and so you can skip all the way to where the sourdough starts.
And quite frankly, I wouldn't blame you.
But I feel like I need to explain to those who do want to listen to what is the value of sourdough and why have I changed my mind. A few years ago, my cousin moved in and she made sourdough bread, and I did help her and I really did enjoy it. But I noticed that you had to babysit a starter. Every day we had to feed it, and I thought, you know what? I just am not interested in doing that. Plus, using fresh milled flour sourdough recipes, it really is an all-day process. And honestly, the healing stories, the majority of them are with just the fresh milled flour, the basic recipe that I have shared with you guys. And so I thought, well, why would I even need to do this? Because the testimonies are from the bread in itself. The testimonies, the health, the nourishment is from the wheat berry. And that is true, but this is what happened with me. I took a trip to Idaho to visit some grain farmers, Jade and Julie Coyle, who own Ancient Grains of Grand Teton. She sent me home with a starter. Being that my new platform has a lot to do with fresh milled flour and making bread, I felt like I needed to be well versed across the board. And so since I'm being sent home with a starter, I felt like it was time. I felt like this was a sign that I needed to go ahead and get started. So I did. I got my starter nice and bubbly, and I made my first loaf, and it kind of turned out like a brick. However, it was still edible, and honestly, it still had some good flavor, but I was on a mission to make a loaf of bread that I felt confident I could share with you. Because I'm not going to share something that is second best. It's got to be good, or I'm not going to put it out there. I probably tried 8 more recipes, and some of them were fine, but they weren't the best until this one. So what I'm sharing with you today, I approve of. I think it's great. But here's what happened as I have been going through this journey now since mid-July, and this is September. I noticed, and I don't want to admit this, because I have been making bread from fresh milled flour since probably 2004. I feel better eating the sourdough. It never hits, it never makes me feel bloated. And I'm not saying that the other bread does that, but it does some. This never does. Will I abandon the other recipe? Will I never make it again? I will definitely make my traditional recipe. It has its time and place 100% for sure. Now, people will say sourdough is the healthiest bread on the planet. I disagree, unless you're making it like this. How can you take something that has 0 nutrition and all of a sudden it transforms because it's fermented and now it's nutritious? If you take white flour, white sugar, I just don't see it happening. You know, maybe someone can eat it because the gluten content is lowered, and maybe because there is some fermentation there. But is it gonna make those 70 nutrients that fresh milled flour ends up making internally? Scientists are noticing as they are studying this that in the body, that the fresh milled flour is making the body, like there's this synergy going on, and the body is creating even more nutrients out of the nutrients that it just ate. So out of those 40 nutrients that come with the wheat berry, the body is capitalizing on that. I don't believe that you can do that with sourdough that is made from the white flour, I call it trashy flour, and white sugar. If you change that, maybe you're only using white flour and salt and water, you're still starting with something that has nothing to offer. So making this adjustment is a huge game changer. And so I make bread for the nutrients. The fact that it is delicious and so satisfying is the bonus. So to me, this is my vitamin. I am not interested in making it taste or mimic that store-bought sourdough. I am interested in what this is gonna do for me and what it's gonna do for the people that I give it to, that come into my home and eat my food. That is why I got interested in the sourdough this way, because we are not using commercial yeast. It is creating prebiotics, fermentation that cannot be matched through commercial yeast. It is gobbling up some of the gluten. So the gluten is much lower and the molecular size is much more tolerated by our body, which is why people can eat it this way and they're not bloated and they're not having any other issues. As I have been making it, and of course as I'm making it, I'm eating it, it's kind of like there was a shift here and my body is like, I want this. Not only that, it's really saving money in the future because it's only water, flour, and salt. So I'm not paying for honey. Not that you can't add some honey. I did in my recipe that I just made, that I showed you the loaf. I did put a 1/3 cup of honey in there. I wanted to see what it tasted like. And I increased the salt a little bit because that is going to make an amazing pizza dough. But the way that we're making it today, it is literally just water, flour, and salt. Game changer, cheaper, saving money. And honestly, if you have a grill and you have a Dutch oven, you don't even need electricity to make this bread. Get a hand mill. I've got a hand mill. I can grind my wheat if I need to, if the power's down. And the reason why I mention that, oddly enough, our power was out last night. And I just started thinking because it cut off twice during the night. And I just thought, what if it never came back on? Well, if it never came back on, we could still eat bread. And this might sound a little extreme, but just hang out with me for a minute. We could survive. You can literally survive on this bread. Here we go with this recipe. If you make it, I want to know what you think about it. I think it's pretty darn good. It has that chew that sourdough has. It has good flavor. I love the texture. Yeah, I'm really excited about this. I hope that you enjoy this tutorial. The good thing about it is you just have to be home because it doesn't require a lot of time with the dough. It just requires some throughout the day. This morning I got up and I milled my wheat berries, and I used hard white wheat berries and hard red wheat berries. And I'll put a link in the description below where I get my flour. I get it from where I get my berries. I get it from 4 Generations because they are organic, heirloom seeds, and I love how I can buy them in buckets and know that when they show up, there aren't gonna be any critters that I have to worry about in that wheat berry, which has happened to me in the past. If you mill in a harvest mill, which I highly recommend. I absolutely love my harvest mill, and I'll put a link in the description below. And if you use my code, you actually get $20 off. And then I am going to add 800 grams of iced cold water, and this helps the wheat to absorb the water and become hydrated. So the first thing I do is I'm mixing, and I just mix mine with the spoon, and after it kind of starts to incorporate, I just use my hands. I don't have one of those beautiful, which I wish I did, but there's this whisk that's specially meant for this. It kind of looks like a circle. I just use a wooden spoon in the beginning, and then I use my hands. And we're going to allow this to sit for about an hour. And this will give the wheat time to absorb the water, and then it's going to be more fluffy. It's gonna give you better texture in your bread. That's what I did right here. And this has just been hanging out waiting for this momentous moment. The other thing that you will need is your starter, and look how big and bubbly mine is. So I fed mine last night before I went to bed. If you need more time and you don't want it to be as fast, then you can use less starter. So example, you could use 50 grams of starter, 100 grams of flour, and 100 grams of water. But you want to make sure that you're making enough so that you get enough starter for the actual recipe. This makes 2 loaves that go in the 9-inch pan. My traditional recipe that I already have out on the bread is 2 8-inch pans. So this is more dough. These are bigger. But typically what I do is I take half and make that into bread, and then the other half I make into pizza, which is just fabulous. Let's get going. You can use your hands, but it's gonna take longer because you really wanna make sure that everything gets well incorporated. So I'm gonna be adding 250 grams of the sourdough starter, so I need to weigh that out. I always have a little bit of starter somewhere just in case I end up using it all, but you only need about a teaspoon of starter to be able to keep it going, which is the wonderful thing about it. And when you're not using your starter, just store it in the refrigerator. As long as you're feeding it about every 10 days, you're gonna be A-okay. All right, there we go. So we're gonna add that to the dough. Now what we need to do is add our salt. I'm gonna lift that up, turn the machine on low, and let it go for about 4 minutes. Okay, I actually let this go 5 minutes, and look how beautiful that is. So when you handle the dough, just put water on your hands and then it won't stick, and you don't have to add any more flour because I need to take the dough hook off. And I'm going to transfer this into another bowl. When you're making the sourdough recipe, what we have to do is manipulate the dough to help with that gluten development. So we're going to be doing stretch and folds, and we're going to be doing 6, and I'm going to show you what a stretch and fold is. Okay, so a stretch and fold is where you just start in the front, and you're going to grab it and you're going to pull it up and shake. Everybody has their different method. I've seen people pull it up and stick it in the middle. I don't know, but this is what I do and it works well. Then you're going to turn it. You're going to lift it up and shake. And honestly, this is fun. This dough feels so good. It's just fun to play with. It's like an adult Play-Doh. So we twisted it again and we're giving it a shake. We're gonna I pull mine over one more time. Get under there, shake it out. And every time you do this, you see this dough change a little bit, and it just starts to feel even better and better. You don't have to do this, but I just kind of like to tuck it under and kind of make it a little bit more smooth. And we are gonna cover it with a towel. My towel is damp. Anytime I'm covering with the towel, it is damp because dough loves moisture. And as you see this dirty, it's just because my hands touched it with the flour, but I love to give you a little blessing. So here you go. We're gonna let this hang out for an hour. I have done it to where I only hung out for 30 minutes and it was fine, but I do think you get a better loaf. And I mark mine. I'll forget how many stretch and folds I've done, so I mark mine. I just put a penny down and then I know how many stretch and folds I've done. So I just did one, we've got 5 to go. It's time for the second stretch and fold. So I'm just gonna start at the top. Can you see how that has really changed and it's a lot stretchier now? I just get under there as far as I can. Give that a nice stretch and shake. I feel like we need to break out in song something about shaking, but I can't think of one right now. One more. See, it's really simple. It doesn't take much time. You just have to be there. And while this is hanging out, we're gonna talk about starter, and I'm gonna let you know how to feed it and all those good things. Second stretch and fold. So I add to my penny collection. The whole starter thing sounded really complicated to me at first, but honestly, all it is water and flour. That's it. And it over time, it ferments, sitting on your counter, and all you're doing throughout the week is feeding it every day to get it active. Takes about 7 days. Mine is very active, so for now, the only thing that I need to do is feed it and it continues to grow. But if I am not making bread, I just put it in the refrigerator. In another video, I'll talk about how to start a starter, but it's really easy. It's just flour and water. And I am new to the sourdough community. I love the beautiful loaves of bread that they make, and I do think that you can accomplish that, which I will try at some point. But again, like I said, I'm here for the nutrients, and it just happens to be delicious. But the sourdough is super easy, and the reason why I started that conversation is because I've heard of people doing these all kind of ways. I've heard of people when they're doing traditional sourdough, using one type of flour for their sourdough starter and using a different type of flour for the actual bread, that dough. That's not the story with fresh milled flour. We're going to use the exact same flour that we're going to be using for the bread. If you are making bread like I am today with hard white and hard red, you're going to feed that starter hard white and hard red. And the beauty is, if you decide you want to change, maybe you want to do karazen, maybe you want to do einkorn, then you just feed your starter a couple of times with whatever that grain is, and it has transitioned. That's the beauty. It can be whatever you need it to be. You just feed it a couple times and then it becomes whatever that is. So if I'm doing a bread with all hard white, I'm just feeding it all hard white. I took my starter that already existed, and you can take it directly out of the refrigerator. It doesn't matter. Get your jar, and we do need to weigh it. Zero out the scale. I'm measuring in grams, and I'm going to put in my starter, and I do equal parts normally. Like I said before, if you don't want it to be as quick, then you can do less of the starter. So let's see what we have. I kind of ran myself out. I like even numbers. Well, we're here at 136. So we need 136 grams of flour. I'm gonna zero that out because I don't like to do math. I will be putting this back in the jar it came out of. That is so close, and I honestly just don't feel like grinding any more flour right now, so I'm gonna go with it, and it's gonna be just fine. So since it's cramped, and I know I just need, oh, it's close, 136 grams of water, I'm gonna put it right back in here. And then I'll just add my water. I will clean this jar up, don't you worry, before I put it away. Just stir that up, and I'm gonna put mine in the refrigerator after a couple of hours. I just want to get it a little bit active. I'll put it in the refrigerator because I'm done making bread this way for a little bit. All right, good deal. I have a friend that actually will use like the little dried bits and stuff around here. She'll use them too, so I'm just not that advanced to know what to do with all this stuff yet, but I'm not too worried about it. All right, I'm gonna let that go for a couple hours, then I'll put it in the refrigerator. So let's talk about storage, and this is my experience. First of all, when I was given this originally, it was einkorn, and I brought it home, and it survived airport travel. So I got it from Idaho. I went back to Wyoming, flew a couple days later to Arizona, and then the next day flew home. Now, I was putting the starter in the refrigerator and out of the refrigerator and in my suitcase, but it survived all the way home and it was just fine. I then fed it, allowed it to get active, put it in my refrigerator until I was ready to start making sourdough bread. I have gone on vacation, put my starter in the refrigerator for 10 days. I'll feed it right before I go, put it in the refrigerator. It has been fine. I have read about this thing called hooch. I don't like the term hooch. Hooch is not allowed in my home. There ain't no hoochie coochie going on in here. You know what I'm saying? So apparently hooch is when it has been in there too long, it hasn't been messed with, and this dark film comes along the top. I've never seen it. I don't ever want to see it. But they say that even if hooch comes to visit, that you can take your starter and just gently remove the hooch, kick it out the door, and then feed your starter and everything's fine. So they say, but I'm going to do my best to never let hooch show up here because I am not a hoochie mama. I have not seen hooch, and I have left this for 2 weeks before, and there was a slight film on the top, but it was clear, and I just scooped it off. There really wasn't much to it. Brought my starter out, fed it, and it was good to go actually within 6 hours. Sometimes I'll go ahead and do 2 feedings just to make sure it's strong, but I just haven't had many problems, and it's been fail-proof pretty much. They say that it is, whoever they are, that it is a good idea for you to feed your starter before you put it away. So I do that. With the starter, you're taking out, so as we are doing 50 grams, 50, whatever it is that you're using, 100, your starter, your flour, your water. The reason you're doing that is because now, see how much starter we have? So if I didn't take out, and I use this as my starter, then I'm having to use this much flour. We're using a lot of flour, and eventually you're gonna have buckets of starter if you just keep adding to it. So the reason why we're taking out is so you don't have tons of starter that you don't know what to do with. But if you do have extra starter, you can use your starter to make pancakes and all kinds of things. I haven't experimented with that yet, but I have read lots about it. I've seen lots of recipes. It's on my very long list of things to do. This is my 5th stretch and fold, and it's a good thing I've got the pennies because I'm telling you it's hard to keep up. So you might want something to document how many times you've done it. The weather has changed here. It started raining outside and got just a little bit chilly, so put a jacket on. Look how pretty this is and how it's just transformed, and it feels really, really good. My towel kind of dried out, so I'm gonna get that wet because, say it with me, dough loves moisture. After your 6th stretch and fold, you're going to let it rest once again for an hour, and then it's time to get them ready for the pans. We're gonna roll them out. This makes 2 loaves, and you're going to braid and fold and roll the dough. And then you're gonna put it in the bread pan and allow it to rise for 45 minutes before putting it in the oven. A couple of different ways you can do it. You can put it in a cold oven and allow it to preheat, which is going to help it to pop a little bit more and give it a little bit more rise. Or you can have a Dutch oven in the oven ready, and it's hot, and what it acts like is it acts like an incubator. So when you put the dough in there, it kind of creates this steam bath for it, and then it helps with the texture of the dough. I want to show you what I'm using for my pan options. This is Pampered Chef stoneware, and this is a 9-inch, and I'm gonna line it with parchment paper because it's easier to take the bread out when it's still hot. So I'm getting that line, set that to the side. You can use this. I have 2 different size roasting pans, and I'll tell you can use them both. So you can use this one with the bread in it. Now I'm undecided on which one I want to choose. Or you can use the big one, and you can put the bread pan inside. You can also put like a water bath on the bottom, and that helps with the steam as well. So there's actually a lot of options, and now I don't know what I want to do. Plot twist. This is what I decided to do. I am going to use the Banneton. This is my silicone Banneton that I got from T-Mars, and I'll put a link in the description below because I do love this. So I'm going to do a loaf in the Banneton, and I'm going to allow it to proof in the refrigerator overnight. And that overnight proof is going to make it more fermented. It's going to have another ferment process. But as soon as I get up in the morning, I'm gonna put it in the oven. So I just got up. It's too early to turn the lights on, but I am doing a water bath in the oven, and that is gonna help with steam. And I actually decided that I'm gonna bake this loaf in the Banneton. So I'll just take the towel off, take it out of the refrigerator, pop it in a hot oven this time, and I have the steam bath in there while it's preheating, so that once it reaches that 400 degrees, it's going to have that steam already in the air. And I'm gonna go ahead and do one spray with misting water just to kind of pop that steam bath, because that's gonna help give that bread that nice crunch on the outside, and I think it's gonna be delicious. I feel like this was the move, so we'll see. So at the 400 degrees, I am setting a timer for 15 minutes. And then I'm gonna turn the oven down to 375 for the rest of the time, which is probably gonna be another 30 minutes. But once it starts getting brown, I'm gonna do the internal temperature test to make sure we have it between 205 and 210 degrees. Just to recap, I set the timer for 15 minutes, and then I'm gonna turn it down to 375. I'll probably spray the oven one more time with water, just give it that nice pop of steam. And I will do an internal temperature test. And I'll put this in the description below because this is the best, because it has an alarm. So when you get to the temperature that you're looking for, the alarm goes off. So you don't have to keep checking it, which is super nice. We're looking for an internal temperature between 205 and 210 degrees. And I will need to keep an eye on it, make sure it doesn't get too brown on top. So I'll put the aluminum foil over the top when it starts to brown up. You don't ever put the probe in to check the temperature until it is starting to brown. It's time to probe the bread, and the amazing thing is it never got too brown with this basket. I am loving it. It's got a little ways to go for doneness, so I'm just gonna set that to the side. Okay, I just now tinted it, and it's been in the oven for 40 minutes. Guys, it's ready, and it is gorgeous. Look at that. It's so beautiful. I am so down with this Banneton, and I wish I would have done the other one this way, but now I know, because I have two of these. One's round, one's shaped like this. I am just really pleased with this. See, it has the nice crisp on the outside. This is beautiful. Wow, I'm super impressed and excited. I'll show you the other angle. Look at that. It's just beautiful. It's been 10 minutes, and so it's time to remove the loaf. It smells so good, and it is just, it's beautiful, beautiful. Has that nice crust that people are after in that sourdough loaf. So I'm gonna let this completely cool, and then we'll cut it because I have to do the taste test between this and the other one and see as far as flavor. Is it better because we put it in the refrigerator overnight and it was allowed to ferment longer? So we'll see. This is the moment of truth. It smells like a pizza parlor in here. Which one is the best? More fermentation, less fermentation? I'm gonna try this one first. This is the one we put right in the oven. Sounds good. Looks good. I'm gonna take a little half a piece here so I don't get too full. No butter, just eating it like it is. I feel like butter might cloud my judgment just a little bit, so we're just eating it stripped down. Bare minimum. Nice chew, nice texture, nice flavor. I still feel like we could bump up the salt amount another half of a teaspoon. I'm not unhappy, but I think I'd be happier. This is good. It's good. I would give this an 8 out of 10 just because I would like it to have a little bit more salt. But it is delicious. Great texture. Proud of you. Now the moment I have been waiting for. Definitely crunchier on the outside. Looks good. Now, one thing that people say, you know, that they want from sourdough are the big holes. Well, this is a different situation with fresh milled flour. So I would rather have the nutrients than the big holes. I do want to say this about the look. I feel like this one would look just as good, regardless of whether we did the overnight in the refrigerator or not, if we put it in the Banneton. And it would have changed things slightly if we did the water bath. So let's see if it was worth the wait. Kind of surprised. Not worth it to me. I think I like the other one better. How weird is that? I am gonna dip it in some butter. Guys, around here, we just leave the butter out because we eat it all the time. That's good. They're both good. Not worth the extra time, in my opinion. I'm not a big sour girl, so I've heard some people leave it in the refrigerator for 48 hours. They really want that nice sour. I'm not after that. That might be something that you want to do or try, but I'm really good with that one. Yeah, I'm happy. Now I can't stop eating it. So good. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I want to thank you so much for being here, and if you would please leave me a comment below. Are you making sourdough? Have you made sourdough bread using fresh milled flour? And if so, how do you feel? Do you feel the difference? Can you tell that you are doing something different? I can definitely tell a difference. It makes my body feel better. I don't feel bloated. Never do I feel bloated when I'm eating this bread. And it's just amazing nutritionally. So again, thanks for being here. If you don't mind, if you would please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified whenever I have new content coming out. And you guys have a great day.
Good job, team. Good job, team.